welcome to MotorInc First. Today we're going to talk about a Chinese van, and Karthik has just finished driving one. I'm putting that at the beginning because there will be people who say, oh, you shouldn't cover Chinese vehicles at all. First of all, I want to make this clear. We evaluate vehicles. That's what we do. Where they come from cannot be the primary consideration. Second, you get to vote with your money. If you don't want to buy Chinese products, please don't buy them. Start with your phones. And third, it's a car. It's come from China. It's available on sale and somebody's going to spend money on them. Karthik is trying to help. That's all there is to it. Shall we begin with the car?
Yeah.
Where did you drive it?
I drove it in Chennai.
Oh, nice.
And obviously that means East Coast Road.
Why am I not surprised?
Yeah, where else?
Did you go north or did you go south?
Either MMRT or the East
Yeah.
Coast Road. That's about it.
Yeah.
Other than that, just making your way through Chennai is...
Correct.
Every time I'm taken aback by how much more attention and care I take when I'm driving there.
It's more chaotic than usual, you think?
It's definitely worrying. I don't think it's gotten worse, thankfully. I don't think it's gotten worse, but it definitely makes me sit on the edge of my seat when I'm driving there.
I know that this is a little dark, especially like a minute into the episode, but when Aarti was ill and we were looking to be on donor lists for transplants, cadavers, everybody said go to Tamil Nadu.
Are you serious?
This is why. It's the transplant capital state in terms of, and cadaver transplant means an accident has happened.
Oh yeah.
Right? And therefore organs are available. And they all said unilaterally saying, this is the legal way to do it. Illegal, of course, there's other places to do it or whatever. But they said, if you want to do this legally, be on that list, then you have to go to Tamil Nadu to do this.
Okay. Yes.
So there is something about Tamil Nadu traffic for sure.
I'm just...
Resetting? I know.
Yeah. Okay. Or if you have to do something to change the mood, the one thing I noticed when driving out to the ECR, you know, they have signals there. The red light on the signals is heart-shaped.
How will that help?
I have no idea. But it's just like, oh, you're stopped at a red light. Look, love.
So what does it say below that? Love?
The others are
love,
normal.
Share, subscribe.
Yeah, oh, it's a like. I never thought of it that way. But yeah, you're looking at...
So, you know, it's very... I mean, you're admitting your age in public by saying that the heart symbol, this is a heart. It's a like.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not afraid to admit that.
It's a like, right? And after like, the next symbol is the orange light, and that's called share.
What is the share symbol? Anyways, so that was a weird but sweet thing I noticed on the way driving out. And it wasn't just one signal, several of them. I've got a picture.
Nice.
Before we get to the road, I think let's talk about the eMAX 7 and rather where it's coming from. This is the upgrade, or you could think of it as a update to the E6, which was the first BYD passenger vehicle that went on sale in India. And if you must know, BYD has been in India for much longer.
Okay.
They have been building buses.
Okay.
And those buses, Electra buses that you would have seen, those are from BYD. So they have been around for much longer than they've been doing passenger cars in India.
Got it.
So the E6 was their first electric offering. Since then, of course, we even spoke about the Seal, and they've had the Atto 3, which we still haven't driven on MotorInc, but Seal we have driven, and we've discussed that with you. Now, the main thing in this entire time that I went to Chennai to drive the eMAX 7, what it hit home to me was the impact of time. Back in 2021, 22, when the E6 came about, that was our first BYD passenger vehicle.
Correct.
And that was pretty much, it feels like the early days of EVs. And we had seen, of course, the Nexons and whatever else came about at that point. But this was like the first international product. And it was a game changer.
Okay.
It felt like a game changer because of the one thing that BYD is today known for, which is their electric architecture. It was literally, and it felt like you're doing the same things again, but it just felt different driving the eMAX 7 because it was the same place. We had gone to Chennai. We had driven on the East Coast Road because their factory is there. So we went there, got the cars there, drove out to the East Coast Road, same stretches pretty much. And so the sensation back then was, oh my God, BYD. Because the experience of seeing the range indication in the MID, right? And noting that it just doesn't drop off. Or noting that what it's indicating is what you're getting was just revolutionary.
Correct.
And the other thing was, along with the weight of the batteries, remember that used to be such a big part of the conversation. Now it's reducing more and more. But the weight of the batteries used to make the cars behave, in a very weird, awkward manner. The car then, the E6, didn't do any of that. It felt very well-tuned, well-balanced, and it felt like a normal car.
Got it.
So it was revolutionary for back then. And I remember...
Was it revolutionary from the perspective of it being a Chinese product? Or from your perception of, oh wow, electrics can do this?
No, it had nothing to do with Chinese or whatever. It was just to do with the fact that this is an electric vehicle that isn't vaporware, so to speak.
Correct.
Right? It was a car that worked like a normal car.
Nice.
And if there was any Chinese angle to it, it would have been that, yeah, you could have expected a Chinese, by way of the cliche, to be flimsy. This felt solid. The suspension, those kind of things, was well engineered. Whatever it had felt good.
So it was an impressive car.
It was an impressive car.
Even before you factored in the name, the badge, etc., you would have been impressed by this car. Then it's a matter of what your philosophical and personal connotations of seeing BYD, recognizing that they're a Chinese brand, etc., etc. Before that, impressive car, E6.
Yeah. And it wasn't a fancy car. Even back then, if you look at the design of the E6.
Did they sell it to private customers or was it like a taxi?
So they started off as only for fleet operators, and then they graduated to selling it to private owners.
Got it.
So in fact, amongst our friend circle, I have a family where they have got 2 of them, and they travel out to the village where their family hails from, which is not close by. And they bought one, and then they followed up with another one because it's a long distance. And they found that the range just worked for them. And once they got there, you typically be spending a night there, so they'd charge it up at home. No issue. So they went from 1 to 2. So it's a car that has been performing, and even fleet operators have got the E6s.
That's how I see them, because in the area around the office, if you're riding around, which I am, you'll see there are a couple of eMAX. Not eMAXs, there are a couple of E6s that you can see, always with yellow plates, which you asked, was it sold as a taxi first?
Correct. It first started off as a taxi, and I think that was a good thing because their reach wasn't much, and confidence for, I think, private owners wouldn't have been that high. But once all this happened and this was validated that it's a solid product, people moved in and bought that. So now, with it starting off, the E6 starting off as a fleet operator vehicle, and it wasn't that fancy, that was okay. What the eMAX 7 is doing today is changing that angle of it. It's become a premium looking and premium experience on the inside compared to the E6.
Okay.
So my first impression when I got to the hotel where we were going to drive out of, the car was parked outside, and my first thought straight away was, wow, that looks much cooler. That looks premium. And so the face has changed, the design. There used to be a biggish grille sort of over there. Now it has a sportier, cooler look, the headlamps. There's a look that's you could call it a family look, like with the Atto 3 of that bar running between the, what would be the grille, but from headlamp to headlamp, that. So all those elements are there. From the side, of course, it still looks like a van. And compared to the E6, this is longer. Okay. The wheelbase hasn't increased, but it is slightly taller, it's slightly longer, which is to make space for the third row. Now, the E6 was a 5-seater, which as a fleet operator vehicle would have been a bit of a constraint, and even for larger families. In this case, the biggest change with the eMAX 7 is that it's available with 3 rows of seats.
So the 6 sat 5, but the 7 seat 7.
Yes.
Okay, good.
Or the option of 6 as well, because you have the option of captain seats in the second row.
Got it.
So you have the option of a bench or captain seats.
In which case it's still called the eMAX 7.
Yes. It doesn't become the eMAX 6 then. Now, that's the basic lay of the land.
Got it.
So you had a 5-seater, it's become a 6-seater or a 7-seater. It used to feel a bit basic. It started to feel premium, and it's much better equipped.
Is this the size of a what? If I had to give somebody a frame of reference, what would be an equivalent size car?
So in terms of length, it would be similar to a Crista, but in terms of width, height, all of that, not
It's a
as
smaller
much.
van.
Yeah, I think the wheelbase also, if I'm not wrong, it's smaller than a high cross, but longer than a Crista, something like that. So
And this is a skateboard platform, so in theory, the flexibility that BYD has to alter the shape of this van is actually quite a bit.
yeah.
Okay.
So the details of how they've changed the platform, etc., we couldn't get, but fundamentally, it is a little bit taller, it's a little bit longer, and even with the third row of seats now, the cool thing is that the luggage space with the third row folded down, of course, is the same as what it was with the E6.
Why couldn't we get details?
The communication is a little bit long between the two continents.
But they've signed the agreement now, no? Now it should be easier.
HQ is HQ.
So this is not a Chinese thing, honestly. We have suffered the same issues with the Japanese companies also. You ask them a question, it has to go up 10, 20 levels, then another 30 levels have to approve it, then it has to come back. It gets stuck in that process. So we have made just a few assumptions for this car, but most of it we are focusing on the result of what they've done rather than what they've done, because by the time they tell us what they've done, maybe the eMAX 8 will be here.
And there will be certain things that we'll talk about now which require more answers, more detailed answers, but we don't have them. So we're just going to have to work with what is, right? But the price is a good point here to discuss. Again, E6 versus eMAX 7. I always struggle with the name. The older one was priced at 29 lakhs, about thereabouts.
Okay.
The new one is about 30 lakhs.
That's not bad.
For the top spec variant.
For which you get one seat. I'm just joking. Come on.
So the eMAX 7 now is available in two variants. Earlier, it was only one.
Captains and bench.
No, so in both the variants, so it's called Premium and Superior, or
Are you serious? The eMAX 7 Premium and the eMAX 7 Superior.
I don't know which one is which.
But the word Max is already there.
Yeah, but that's seating capacity. You only brought it up.
E7 Premium, E7, what was the other one?
Superior.
Superior. Doesn't it sound better than eMAX 7 Premium?
So we'll just call it low and high. So the lower variant now sits at a price point which is under what the E6 was priced at.
Okay.
So this is at about 26, something like that, or close to 27. And the difference between the low variant and the high variant in terms of price is only about 2.5 lakh rupees. 6-seater variants are cheaper than the 7-seater variants. Okay. And
6-seaters are cheaper than 7s.
Yeah, even I was taken aback. But it makes sense.
So you can get captain seats for less, benches for more.
Yeah.
And for private sector use, like for LMB use.
For everybody, yeah.
Very interesting.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Even I was taken aback with that.
Yeah.
Generally, the 6-seaters are seen as the more premium offerings. So they're always priced higher.
It's like BYD is charging you for hardware rather than the notional value of the premium.
It's actually that.
Yeah.
And which makes complete sense, because that's more stuff in there.
Correct.
Anyways, so it's priced lower. The starting price is now lower compared to the E6. And interestingly, it's better equipped as well.
Okay.
So you used to get 4 airbags earlier, now you get 6 airbags. You have the whole suite of electronic stability aids and everything. The interiors, the step up, so you have a larger touchscreen.
Is it 15 inches, Karthik?
It's in the graphics. Okay.
Don't you dare.
It's in the graphics.
I'm so happy
this
that
time
on
he's saying it, okay?
No, listen. I'm so happy that
Shumi, is that a lot?
On the MG Windsor, you guys did what we requested you to do and not go there. Awesome. I'm literally asking about the touchscreen size. There is no other implication to this.
It's in the graphics.
Huh?
They'll know. It's in the graphics. Okay.
It's so big, he won't even tell us what the numbers are. The touchscreen.
It's got a largest touchscreen and leatherette upholstery, which is standard. So whether you pick the low or the high variant, it's there. So the equipment levels, by and large, the experience on the inside, all of it has stepped up, even on that lower priced variant now.
Okay.
The difference is...
So it's clearly being oriented more towards a private customer, whereas the last car was a little bit more taxi, private. Got it? Okay.
The big difference between the low and the high variant is the motor power and the battery size.
Okay.
The lower variant gets a smaller battery, around 50 kilowatt hours, whereas the higher variant gets a 71.8 kilowatt hour battery pack. So that's the big difference. The power of the two motors is different, but that's down to software rating.
Sure.
It's the same motor essentially. So the higher variant, you look at the low variant and you think this is pretty good. It's got pretty much everything you want, and it's got the same amount of torque from the motor. There's no difference. The difference is only in power and the range. And the range isn't small. It's like 430 or something like that.
IDC.
NEDC, I think, is the one that they are claiming.
But we still will roughly take 70% of that as the real world range.
In their case, that 400 and whatever, you will say at least 350 you'll get.
Oh, okay. So it's better than 70%.
Very strong. They're very strong on this front. I'll tell you what happened with the top spec variant that we drove. So it's a very usable package, and you could easily go for that, no problems. The few feature misses between the low variant and the higher variant are ventilated seats, ADAS. The higher variant now gets ADAS. There's a power tailgate, there's wireless charger. These kind of features are missing in the lower variant. No big deal breakers.
Okay.
It's a good car. You could go for that. But then you look at the higher variant, which is less than 3 lakh rupees extra. And for that, you're getting all of this. Plus a 71.8 kilowatt hour battery pack, plus more power, the panoramic sunroof, all of that. It's just a lot of value. And the panoramic sunroof,
because China's birth rate has started falling, they don't need sunroofs quite so often anymore.
It's a fixed glass roof. Sorry, I may have called it panoramic.
I thought they were trying to help solve a problem. Clearly, they're not.
So yeah, so it's really well equipped. So considering it's only a little bit more expensive than the E6, it is great value.
Nice.
Much, much better than before, and a good, pleasing experience. Again, what you see on the inside, in terms of the seats, and they have these chocolate brown leatherette seats, look good. Quality of materials, good. The interesting thing was, now when I got into this car, while it's become more premium, while it's offering you better value, my sense with it this time around was, hey, it's not as premium as I thought it would be. Because this is also now you remember the Windsor. Like the Windsor in so many ways felt, oh, this is really
It's
cool.
a British castle. This is just a Chinese car, man.
The small things like the buttons on the steering wheel, the controls, quite simple.
But you knew what the buttons would do, right? Which you can't say for the MG Windsor.
Yeah, thank God. Oh, there's a similar theme here as well. There is a problem here as well. So that large touchscreen, since we are on that topic, air conditioning controls all stuffed in there. You have some, it's a very nice, ergonomically very nice thing. You have an armrest, there's a gear lever, and there are toggles right next to that. One is for the drive modes, the other is for the regen mode, and then there are buttons. I think on the left hand side was one button for the air conditioning, which was on or off.
Got it.
That's it. Everything else was in the touchscreen. So this actually happened when I was done driving and I asked somebody to drive me around, and we were getting out of the hotel and we were at one end of ECR, and I didn't know the gentleman who was driving. I just requested somebody from BYD's team to help me out. So he got into the car and he started driving, and as soon as we were getting out of the hotel, literally at the exit of the hotel, and I was like, I want him to change the air conditioning settings. I want to drop the fan speed or increase the fan speed, something like that. I was like, no, I don't want to distract him while he's driving because he'll have to look at the screen so much to navigate the menus. I remember taking a note, I think to get to to turn on the seat ventilation, it was 3 clicks. So I'd go home because you'll be in Apple CarPlay or something. Then you'll go home, then you'll get to the air conditioning menu. Then in that, you'll go into the seats menu, and then you'll turn it on. I mean, there are voice commands to do this. I haven't tried it out.
So what do you say in this case? Hello, BYD.
I think so.
It's very imaginative how we evoke our voice assistants across all our devices.
Hello, BYD. So a lot of the controls are in the menu. I mean, in the touchscreen, which can be a little annoying. And that's the one thing about this car that I did not like. And this is something we discussed even with the Seal, that I think some of the finesse in how things are pulled together is missing. What is startling about this car. We'll talk about that first. We'll get to these little things later.
Sure.
I think what we need to highlight here is that with the eMAX 7, with it getting a more powerful motor, and this is really crazy. The battery pack has gone from 71.7 kilowatt hours to 71.8 kilowatt hours.
Correct.
But the range is the same. There's a slight difference of 10 kilometers or something like that. But they say that's down to which mode of measurement it was, NEDC or WLTP or whatever.
Right.
It's down to that. The actual functionality is not changed. And keep in mind that now this motor makes over 200 horsepower.
Oh, phew.
Yeah.
That's a fast van.
And the old one was 95.
Wow.
Right?
That's crazy battery optimization.
Yeah. So this was one of the big questions. What's changed? Because BYD at this point in time was supposed to bring in a new generation of batteries. So I was like, is this the new gen batteries? How is this happening? Because the range you're managing to maintain and you're managing to deliver this high level of performance. So, but those answers aren't available. I think what they're doing, and this is the driving experience part of it, is that they are controlling the performance. So at no point did I feel that, wow, this is a 200 horsepower car. It's also heavy, of course, yes. But did I feel like that, man, this is crazy quick? Didn't feel like that. Whether you're an eco, normal, or sport.
So energetic, but not enthusiastic.
No, it's not that kind of fast. It doesn't feel athletic. It feels brisk, but not lively as such. It'll do whatever you want it to do quickly, effortlessly. In fact, because it was the same place, there was this one section that we'd driven down to. Or, you know, if you're driving down the ECR towards Mahabalipuram, when I'd taken the E6 earlier also on the ECR, you know, on the left-hand side is the way to the beach, and on the right, there are many places we can go in, and there are those salt pans.
Right.
So the last time when I'd taken it down there, this is one access road which has a very steep decline. And on the way back, what I'd done was I checked for gradability. So I'd taken it, parked it in the middle of the slope, so you're halfway up.
Right.
I said, how would it respond? And what I remember was that it did it confidently, but it did it slowly. So when I went on the gas, it's like almost like, is it going to go or not? And then it started moving, and it kept moving. But throttle application did nothing to change the pace.
So it crawled up.
Yeah. Now, in this case, with the eMAX 7, the same place, same conditions, it's still as steep. It was propped. It didn't feel like, oh, it's gauging what's the best it can manage to get out of this situation. It just got going. So
Correct.
that performance, I think there'll be usable functional advantages of it. If you're traveling with 7, if you're going up mountains and stuff, steeper roads, there will be an advantage to it.
This is software, I think, because on the Ather Rista Smart Eco mode, you have exactly the same kind of system.
Okay.
Smart Eco is super conservative in design in terms of it wants to maximize your range almost literally at the expense of everything possible. So if you're climbing uphill, it loses speed all the time until it gets to some residual speed, which is a crawling speed like 10, 12, 13 kmph. Then the motor mode changes and the software won't let the motor go any slower than this end stop. Somehow or the other, it will drag you uphill at this 11, 12, 13 kmph. But it does not have acceleration at this point.
Okay.
But if you go to zip mode, oh yeah, there is acceleration. You can climb this hill. And it takes quite a bit before the slope becomes so steep that in Smart Eco, in zip mode, you start losing speed.
Okay.
So this is software.
Yeah, they actually have said that the new system that they're using, they call it a 8-in-1. So all the various electrical architecture components have been integrated in. So there's greater efficiency. That was one of the things that they said is the reason why they can deliver more performance, but at the same time manage the range. But also along with that, there has been some change to the battery. So in terms of performance, did I think back then that the E6 was not quick enough in normal conditions, just cruising down the ECR?
Yeah.
No, it was
It was
fine.
fine.
Did this feel dramatically better? No, it felt capable. It may have been quicker, but it wasn't like a night and day difference to me right now. When I'm thinking back to both the cars, it didn't feel lacking. this doesn't feel spirited. So it's all right. For an MPV, what you're expecting is getting the job done, right? So there's somewhere managing this, and I think it is through software, because when you think about changing modes, the drive modes, you go from eco to normal to sport. In this, the range prediction does not change. It just does not change.
Okay, so then why would you switch modes at all?
And that also, the difference between the modes to me is not so dramatic. You can feel that, okay, under 40 kilometers an hour, the eco mode is absolutely fine. And when you get past that, the normal mode feels a little bit more responsive. And the sport mode will be a little bit more responsive
So just
as you go faster.
call it drive. And then you're in eco mode up to 40. In what is currently the normal mode between 40 to whatever 80. And from 80 onwards, you're in sport mode. Why do you need 3 driving modes at all?
Yeah. So the modes, so all these software things, and this is the same thing, remember with the seal, the brake regen was not as predictable or as natural as I had expected. And I think it's these software aspects in terms of usability which they're not managing to dovetail together.
Got it.
And when you go into the infotainment system and go through the settings there's so many more settings there, right? So for the steering, there's a normal and a sport, which is okay. Then there's a similar setting for the brakes, but none of these seem to be linked to the drive modes. And then there is a range mode, which is standard and aggressive or something. I've got images of all of that. I'll put it up.
A range mode that is standard and aggressive.
Yeah.
What is aggressive range?
I have no idea.
Will it aggressively protect your range, or will it give you aggressive performance and screw range?
No, aggressive is clearly the one, or whatever it's called, standard and something.
Okay. The name is not actually aggressive.
I'm not sure. In my head, it's aggressive. No, it mustn't be aggressive. Whatever it is, standard and
Aggro.
Something. So in this was the only thing which would change the range prediction.
Got it. And you'd get more if you went into this aggressive mode, or less?
Less.
Okay. No, because look, I am not a native English speaker, so sometimes I mistake words for what I think they mean and they mean something else. A lot of which I can't say on YouTube, right? But when the Chinese start using English words, we know that there is history there.
Yeah.
And they've gotten a heck of a lot better for sure, but there is history there, right? So when they say aggressive range, I don't know whether they mean aggressively give you more range and therefore your driving experience will suffer in the process or not. So I have to clarify.
So I don't even know whether it's aggressive or not. You would have seen it on the screen by now. But there's one more thing on this note. So the region modes are standard and larger.
Larger?
Yeah.
What grows okay, no. No, we're not going there. No.
He wants you to. Do you understand?
No. Okay, just tell me what's the difference between the two modes.
So standard is low region.
Okay.
And larger is heavier region.
Got it, okay.
So in standard, it felt fairly loose. In the larger mode, sounds.
I didn't do anything here, okay?
In the other mode,
so it feels like it's freewheels a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. And in the other mode, it also has more regen, so it does slow you down more. You can feel that, but is it like a single pedal type?
It's not designed for it.
And again, I think the consistency is the thing that I would like. That how much it slows you down. When can you expect it to cut off, if it is going to cut off? Those kind of things I couldn't get my finger on in this time that we drove. And we spent about 140 kilometers with the car in that day, which is not insignificant. If I must draw a parallel, I'd go to the Windsor straight away, because that's the one thing. In fact, when we finished the conversation about the Windsor, the MF, I was actually surprised that I did not discuss with you what the car actually felt like to drive. All I told you was it was good and that it felt predictable. And that, I was thinking about it, was the ultimate compliment. It's not complicated. It does what you want it to do. Whereas with so many others, and here with this as well, there are so many things that just don't feel that natural.
Got it.
You have to figure them out and think like, oh, what's it doing? How should I make the best use of it? So I think there's a lot of software related stuff which needs to get simplified and become more natural to use so that it's just seamless.
Okay.
But given that it's an MPV, having these modes and all, I mean, practically is, I don't know who's going to use them. And in this regard, it does do some strange things. Okay. You have the instrument cluster. Now, again, this is one of the things, right? You'd expect a completely digital instrument cluster. It's not. It's got 2 analog dials and a digital MID in the middle. Okay.
Why?
Yeah, and that's not the strange part. The left dial it shows a readout from 0 to 140. What do you think that's for? Its top speed is 180, just say.
0 to 140, top speed is 180. I don't know how many years you have left to live.
How much power it's delivering. So it's an analog dial that's reading out
PS.
how many kilowatts
Okay.
kilowatts it's generating at that point. And of course, it also has a boost gauge. So like when it's doing regen, it tells you that it's doing regen, and then there's boost and stuff like that. I was like, in a van, what do you need this? It's just like there's so many, like this was just like, why do I need this in an MPV? I can't put my finger on it, right?
It's because it's the spiritual successor to the Veyron, which also had a power meter.
Yeah, correct. Veyron also had that. So it does these strange little things like that. And in the MID, there is of course, it's a computer, right? So it's got different screens. And one of the screens is for your recording your acceleration runs. 0 to 60. Yeah. So you know how you're on the bikes, you have the lap timer type thingy? That kind of a display for you to record your 0 to 60, 0 to 100. And
in a van.
I love it.
The Seal has this? In the Seal?
I don't know. I'm sure it does. I'm sure it does. The only reason I went into so much detail into the MID was because I was trying to figure out there has to be a simpler way to use stuff. And the other thing that I found in the MID was controls for the air conditioning system. I could control the blower speed from the
thermostat and blower speed both.
I don't remember whether there's thermostat as well. I'm sure it must be. But the blower speed for sure. You'll see that I've got a video of it as well. I was just like, this is how you complicate stuff. In the pursuit of simplifying, you've complicated it. Instead of just being able to reach out and use the air conditioning blindly, now you're toggling through your steering controls to control the air conditioning. Oh my God.
And when you're on the phone as you drive and doing all of these stuff, my God, on a bike, it just makes me so nervous.
Yeah. Again, nice point to bring this up. Visibility, very good. I think the basics of the car in terms of the glass area, all of that, solid. So,
and air conditioning this time was effective because on the Windsor it was borderline.
Correct. So in this there was no issue. The sunshade, despite the large roof, and we were in Chennai at this time, it's still not going to be pleasant. So you didn't feel any heat leaking in from there.
Nice.
Even though, and yeah, the second row windows, no sunshades. I think I would have expected that for sure. Now coming to this car as it's trying to become more premium, that would be, and especially in our environment, it does help. That's still not there. But the air conditioning was decent. I'm not going to say it was wow, because when I was in the second row, I felt like that's when I was telling you, right? When somebody else was driving, what I wanted to tell him was,
turn it up.
Turn it up. There are blower controls at the back, but you need more cooling. So I want you to adjust the temperature. But I just said, forget it. I'm going to sit in the back and let him drive. So yeah, the air conditioning was okay. We will, of course, spend more time with it when we get an opportunity and check it out. But fundamentally, okay. Now moving to the second row, I think this is where, to me, maybe again it's expectations of BYD. And I'm saying that we have seen them do great electrical hardware, and this is a step ahead for the E6. Expecting it to be a more serious MPV. And in that regard, I think the fundamental difference, and this is something that happens with all EVs, but this is an MPV, so your expectations are going to be there any which way, is that you have more supportive seats. But in this, the floor just feels higher. So even though there is room, you feel like you're sitting like this, right? And so the second row seats, the captain seats, they slide. And there's reasonable amount of.
So you drove the captains. You didn't drive the bench, or you drove both.
I didn't drive the bench. The bench versions were there, but I drove the captain seat version. And in that, space is not an issue, but it's not fundamentally a car that talks to me saying that, hey, this is meant for long drives, because the same issue will play out in the third row as well. And I don't know which one you were joking about this, that. Yeah, if you drop the seat low enough, the headroom will be enough, right? So in the third row, yeah, knee room is okay. Headroom is okay, but yes, it is low.
Got it.
That's how you manage that. Like, see, the seats configurations can always change. The length of the seat base, how high it is, the angle of the seat base. We've discussed this. So the different ways to play around to create a sense of space, but the comfort that you get is something that will be altered and you will feel it. So in the third row also, you get there. It's again well thought through. The first time I've seen that seat back pockets for third row occupants is there behind. It's got very nice aircon vents which are roof mounted, and generally with panoramic sunroofs, when there's a sunroof, you'll see that there are no aircon vents on the roof.
Correct.
Yeah, they've got nice little vents on the sides, and which is always good because it helps direct airflow better.
Yeah.
Rather than when they are mounted low or on the side.
Correct.
Right. So all that is there. It's a convenient car, like for family use. But does it come across in terms of space and comfort as a long distance machine? That's not really top of my mind. I think of it as a convenient electric
Van.
I think of it as a sedan actually. Because of this kind of seating configuration. And this was one of the first things actually I made a note of when I started driving, that I couldn't find the right seating position. And as I spent time with it, I realized what I needed to do was stretch out. Because you're in a van, you're thinking you're going to sit like this. Whereas in a sedan, you sit like this. And I found the right seating position when I pushed the seat back,
Got it.
pulled out the steering a little bit. And then I found a place which was like, yeah, now the pedals and everything is falling properly. And this feels right while driving it. So it looks like a van, but I tell you, think of it as a sedan.
But there is adjustment to cope for it. It's just slightly odd the first time you do it.
Yeah. And see, from a driving standpoint, you'll settle in fine.
Yeah.
That's not a problem. I think it's the second and third rows, which for extended use. Like we spoke about the Carnival.
Yeah.
In the Carnival also, we said that the hip point is low.
Yeah.
And the floor is high. The relation between them isn't as lavish as we'd expect for an MPV.
Right.
But in the Carnival, you had so much adjustability for the seat to get under thigh support and be comfortable despite it being set low.
Correct.
That's not the case here.
Right.
You don't have that adjustability. It's not that these seats are powered or ventilated in the second row. So what you have is what you'll have to make the most of. And if somebody's taller, then that will be a bigger factor to play. For me, if I'm thinking under thigh support is not wow. It's a
Yeah, fair enough.
It's mediocre, right? So that's second and third rows. In terms of boot space, I know I referred to it earlier, but with the third row in use, you can get 2 overnighters.
Okay.
That's about it.
Bring your duffel.
Bring your duffel. Yeah, that will. Last time I think it was bring your dolphin.
That's because the dog won't fit. If it's just like 2 overnighters, your dog's not going to fit. I said bring your dog.
And again, as a travel machine, keep in mind that it doesn't have a spare wheel. There's a puncture repair kit. So the space underneath is empty. There's nothing over
Is there a way to mount the spare wheel if you buy one? No.
No, there's nothing. It would have been under the body.
So it's the luxury car experience. Buy a Mercedes-Benz and stick the spare wheel in the boot, and now it takes up most of your boot. This is the Indian luxury car experience. You can have the same thing with your BYD too. Buy the thing and stick it in your boot.
Yeah, fold down one of the seats in the third row. That's that's your only option.
Nice.
So the third row seats are recline adjustable, and there's a very cool thing where the bottom and the back are hinged together. So when you adjust the angle, it changes the support that you get as well.
Okay.
Small thing, but it doesn't really help that much for adults. For kids, it would be fine. I think this back seat for kids would be super. They'll have no complaint. They'll be comfortable there. And that finally brings us to the suspension angle of it. For the most part, I think it's good.
Okay.
It's supple. It's controlled enough. In the first and second rows, first row, and with all MPVs, we see this again and again. If there's not enough control, the further back you go in terms of the rows, the worse it'll get.
Yeah.
Right? So if it's terrible, it'll be not good in the second row also. And if it's terrible in the third row, it'll be dramatically bad.
Yeah.
So in this case, I think the setup they've got is decent. It's good. Because remember, this car is effectively the same wheelbase, but it's longer.
Yeah.
It's a little bit heavier. And to me, this is one of the things that we asked. Have you changed the suspension tune from the E6 to this? Because to me, this feels a little bit on the softer side.
Okay.
I would have liked it to be firmer. Because what happened was, when I sat in the front I could feel a little bit of bounciness at the rear, and I thought it would be bad. But when I got into the second row, it was fine.
Okay.
Then you can feel a little bit of the movement. That softness is there. But in the third row, it's more pronounced. Again, it's not. I thought it would be bad. It wasn't.
But it's designed for children, right? Children can bounce up and down. Anyway, they'll be bouncing up and down because nobody's using child seats, right?
And
If
they're
they're
the
bouncing
top-
up and down, how will they notice that the car is also bouncing up and down?
Top candidates to throw up. Remember?
Which is fine. Children don't think of throwing up as a problem. The adults accompanying the children think that children throwing up is a problem, right? It's
I
fine.
don't want that
It's very
problem.
good design. I mean, there's nothing wrong with your car, BYD. Don't listen to him.
So yeah, not a problem. But again, my only thought in this is long distances. I would want the tune to be different.
But that's what the seat back pocket is for. It's for the
You
plastic
keep
bags.
the stick
Karthik.
back there. Huh? So overall, I keep coming back to the idea that this car is more of a family sedan and a runabout. It can be your family car, which is a do-it-all, primarily city, and for occasional weekend trips and all. It'll be great. It will give you the flexibility and the convenience. You know, if you're not traveling 5 up, 6 up, you've got great luggage space. And as a regular family car, you go with the bench version. This kind of practicality you're not going to get, right? And the main thing again with this car was its electric architecture. The performance side, okay, not wow, but completely capable. No question of not being able to use it in different environments. But the range, we started off at 99%, and it was showing that we'll do 500 kilometers.
Okay.
We wrapped up the day with it indicating about 59%, and we had done 140 kilometers. So instead of 200, we used 140. That was basically it.
Right.
But that was with us doing all the kind of things that you
Yeah,
are.
it's testing. It's not actual driving.
I did hard acceleration again and again.
Yeah.
I was doing some of the cornering stuff also to see how it would behave. And of course, trying to see how brisk it was on the highway. So all kinds of heavier use.
Correct. If you have
scenarios.
children in the third row, you would not drive like this.
So the range aspect of it, like literally, I know. So it's literally the car and EV where you're going to be like, khatam hi nahi honda.
Correct.
That scenario.
Yeah. Nice.
Which is awesome.
Yeah.
Usability wise, fantastic. That is the core beauty of their products, I feel. And you can see the difference between the Seal and this. The Seal also had great range and good amount of predictability for a high performance machine. There you would see the
job was
depletion
different. Yes.
was higher, not as on point as the eMAX 7. But that's fine. That's
No,
a
that's
high
also because the
performance.
variation in performance would be over a larger spectrum, right? Yeah.
In that, when you shifted to sport mode or something with that dual motor setup,
Correct.
it's explosive,
Yeah.
which is not the case here.
Correct.
So that part of this car still makes it beautiful.
Nice.
Like if that kind of predictability was there for in the mass market space, it would be a game changer, right? So that still remains the beauty of this car. They have made it more premium. It certainly feels more lavish because of all the changes on the inside. The overall experience in terms of an MPV is not quite on point. It's more car-like, I'm going to say that, rather than MPV-like. And that's because to do with the height of the seats.
So MPV is more or less private vehicle.
Huh? Yeah, more or less private. And we've discussed this in one of the other ones where we said that, most vehicles which claim to be MPVs are truly just 7-seaters. They're not really MPVs.
Correct.
To be an MPV, you
You have to be able to put a motorcycle in it.
I thought that was a van, okay?
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. That was a van. That's not an MPV.
So coming back to the eMAX 7. Step up? Yes. Fundamentally, is it a step up in what was their strong point? No.
They've held on to their strengths, improved everything else, and given you a more powerful proposition in two parts, the low and the high. One of them is called premium, the other is called exclusive. We can't tell which one is which. The graphics will tell you because then we can refer to the screen. Shall I do the quick summary?
No. So there's one more point that I want to bring up. And that's the Windsor. If the third row is not important to you, and if you're thinking of this as a city vehicle, that at 16 lakh rupees, that has a much smaller range. It doesn't have as much performance.
Sure.
And it doesn't have a third row. But I can see how things are heating up now. because you can see that because the Windsor's second row is far more spacious.
Yeah, you said.
Far more spacious. And I'm saying 16 lakhs is its no BAL price, right?
And if you add the BAL thing, it is 3.5 more, right?
If you add BAL, it's cheaper, huh?
No, as in if you buy the battery outright, then it is 16 lakhs.
Then it is 16 lakhs.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it'll be 13.5 lakhs or
Right.
something, or 13 lakhs, right? So it's so much cheaper. So as a 5-seater, that would be plenty good. Which is why I think the E6 also had to make this jump to the eMAX 7.
Got it.
Because there is going to be so much change in the space, and we've discussed this about the EV space is going to see a lot of disruption, and these are the value sets that will keep changing. So I think this promise of 500 kilometers that you could get from the eMAX 7 is its core promise.
Got it.
And it's a beautiful one. But the compromise for that is that at 30 lakh rupees, it's not going to be as lavish or as MPV as you would have wanted.
Fair enough. No, but also I think the Windsor is assembled here.
They do basic assembly.
Basic assembly here, so there'll be a tax cut from that.
Yeah.
Whereas I don't think BYD is able to do that at all. When they were trying to, the Indian government said you're not investing in our country or something like that. So they're stuck with a more or less CB operation, if I'm not mistaken. Which is why also, strangely enough, they don't sell a lot of seals, but there is a waiting list for the seal anyway. And I'm expecting that if this car is good, it sounds like it, then this car will also not sell in very large numbers, but there will be a waiting list for it anyway.
And I'm hopeful. Indications are that Auto Expo, which will be Jan, Feb.
Is it still called Auto Expo? It's called the Delhi Mobility, India Mobility,
whatever
something.
it's called.
Okay.
And now it's become annual.
Oh, yeah.
It's in that.
Mobility Expo, isn't it?
I think it's Bharat Mobility Expo. You were right.
Correct.
Bharat Mobility Expo. In that, BYD will be bringing some more stuff.
Got it.
So I think they're looking to go more mass. And if they bring this, even if it is with this simplicity of, let's say, like I was talking the plastics and stuff like that, and the instrument cluster not being as cool and all, it's fine. If they bring fundamentally that core proposition of predictability of EVs becoming normal and the range anxiety being taken out of the equation,
there will be an unlock for them.
And they have a whole bunch of small cars as well, which they've launched internationally, which are very, like, you've heard of the Dolphin.
I told you to bring your Dolphin.
Yeah, they do have a Dolphin.
I told you to bring a Dolphin before there was a Dolphin at BYD.
So the Dolphin is one, they've launched one even under that now.
What is it called?
Even
The porpoise?
I've forgotten the name, but there's one smaller. I'll put the name up as well.
It's an animal, right?
They're all like the sea lion and all that kind of names they have. They are looking to get more aggressive with the Indian market, and I hope they do, because there is a fundamental proposition that they bring which is very valuable.
Good. Oh, my turn.
Before you do the quick summary, there are a few things, small things, but worth mentioning.
Okay.
One, we spoke about the touchscreen and the UI UX for that, as we've seen with other Chinese products, isn't great.
Right.
All right. It's got chimes, as do all cars. These are a bit strange.
Okay.
They have slightly soft bingy boingy sounds, and they are also integrated with the ADAS. We didn't speak about the ADAS, and a large part, that's a good sign, which means it's not annoying. It's okay. I didn't turn it off at all, actually. In fact, on the way there, on the way down to ECR, I was thinking, is it working at all? And then I realized that it is working. The settings were set to late intervention, and it stayed late. And even when it did intervene, it was interesting how it did the brake modulation.
Okay.
It has a soft feel to the pedal. So even when you're braking and it's intervening, it doesn't startle you. So it was nice.
Okay.
But always the advice is switch it off, not for our conditions. It's nice that they're offering it at barely any price hike. So good value in that way, but switch it off. And the other thing with the chimes was that post 80 kilometers an hour, at 80 you get a chime. In this, post 80 kilometers an hour, the chime is always on.
It was like a continuous sound.
Yeah. So the guy who came...
In an electric car.
Yeah.
Which makes no sound otherwise.
This reminded me of the taxi mode, yeah? That, taxis are supposed to be capped at 80. So it's like, almost like, no, you should not be going past this.
Yeah.
And the person who came to drive me, and poor guy, he also got annoyed by it. And he tried to fix it. So he couldn't fix it. I told him I've tried all the settings. I couldn't find it. He called somebody back and said, can you switch this off? That person said, no, you can't switch it off. It just stays. So from 80 kilometers onwards, typically what you get at the 120 where the chime doesn't stop, that's
correct.
at 80 on this. Okay.
So at 120 in most cars, it goes bing, 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 and keeps going until you come back below, right? In this also, it goes like that.
Yeah. It doesn't switch off at all. Then the last thing on the on the topic of sounds, I think the one thing we were talking about BYD specialty being the hardware and this being a more efficient architecture and all of that. The one thing which almost slips out of the conversation because it's so in the background, but it's awesome, is that their motors are so quiet and so smooth. There are different motors that we've experienced where you'll hear different levels of sounds from them. There is some amount of sound, right? This is so quiet and so smooth. There are some motors in which you experienced marching, slight vibration at certain speeds or loads. In this, consistently throughout, smooth and quiet.
Nice.
So the core electric architecture is something that I keep coming back and feeling like that's their golden zone. Everything else that they wrap up around it is solid, but not necessarily the most wow aspect of the car.
Got it.
Yeah.
It's time for the quick summary of the BYD eMAX 7, which should tell you what's the maximum number of people this BYD will seat. There are two versions with the captain seats, which seats 6, and the bench, which seats 7. And there are two versions which have different ranges from different battery capacities and slightly different motor performances. What Karthik has driven is only the top model, which has the more powerful motor, 2 times as powerful as the previous car, which used to be called the E6. There was no Max yet. It's now been maxed out. It was not maxed out before, clearly. But there are lots of hardware changes in terms of the batteries are further optimized and energy density has gone up quite a bit. A lot of new hardware is in there and a lot of new optimization is in there. And what Karthik's first impression of driving this car is it feels like a competent MPV in most situations. On paper, it has double the performance of the previous car on certain metrics, but when you drive it, it doesn't actually feel like a super fast van as much as it feels like a competent van. And he mentioned one specific situation, which is coming to a stop on a slope and then restarting again, where the E6, which is the previous car, would crawl uphill slowly. So it would manage, but it would just about manage. Now with the larger motor, larger battery, it climbs peacefully. I do say larger battery because they're extracting more range from it, although physically the dimension of the battery in terms of how many kilowatts does it store, kilowatt hours it is store, it's exactly the same as before, more or less. It's more optimization than anything else. It's a smart looking car, and I haven't seen the pictures, so I'm not going to assess it. But it has some of the standard BYD elements, like the bar that connects the two headlights with the BYD logo, etc. This is what it looks like. Inside, it's a reasonably spacious cabin. Karthik was surprised because the MG Windsor feels like a more spacious cabin, especially for the second row. Whereas in this car, there's no lack of space, but it's not as lavish as the MG can sometimes feel. It's important because both these electric vans have come out more or less back to back. They're both Chinese made in that sense, and they're both priced very differently because the MG is part assembled in India at some form of fashion. So with the battery, it's about 16 lakh rupees. Without the battery, 13.5 lakh rupees if you take MG's idea of battery as a service, which is actually a loan. And on the other hand, the eMAX is about 2 times that price starting. So the base versions are about 26. The top versions are only about 3 lakh rupees more, which is one of the things that Karthik pointed out, that you'll see the base model and you'll be like, hey, that's a nice enough car. And then the temptation is I can get more value if I just pay 3 and get the top model instead. So most people who will consider this BYD will end up with the top model in any case. The E6 used to be very close to what is the top model right now. So in theory, the eMAX 7 entry point has become lower, for which you get less range. Is it uselessly low range? No, it's not. It's a reasonably rangy car. Is it weak feeling? It should not be. The numbers are okay. But the top model, you add ADAS, you add much more range. 500 is what Karthik saw when he drove the car, and he started at 99%. And I'll come to why BYDs have a special place in his heart when it comes to electrics in a minute. But fundamentally, the upshot is reasonably spacious car, reasonably spacious second row, but not the most comfortable second row. Third row works reasonably well for kids. Adults can manage, but the big picture is he didn't feel like this was a long distance car as much as an urban car. So he's thinking in his head like it's a sedan, but it sort of looks like a van. And even the driving position, which is one of those giveaways for him, was when he sat upright like you would in a van, it just didn't work until he reclined and settled into what would be a sedan driver's driving position. Then it started to work. If you're wondering why the MG is about half the price of the eMAX 7, don't forget the difference in performance and range. The BYDs have a lot more performance and range. Why Karthik has a special feeling for BYDs primarily is not because how they design their cars, because on this car, for example, the UI UX of the touchscreen, massive as it is, not great. Adjusting your air conditioning needs a lot of work, to the point where when somebody was driving him, it required voice commands, and Karthik, being the sweet and polite person that he is, he was like, I just want to distract him, because he's going to have to look for the settings, so I'm not going to say anything. So he just suffered in the back row instead. Air conditioning, not the greatest air conditioner, reasonably effective on a hot Chennai day, so we're not anticipating any issues here. Whereas the Windsor, for example, Gurgaon, hot day, definitely got warm.
Yeah.
Why Karthik likes BYDs is because they seem to have the most clearly constructed, made and integrated electric powertrains. That means the motors stay quiet. When the thing says I'll go 500 in range, the drop off is predictable and it is on the good side of saying, wow, it is still going like this. Karthik actually used a Maruti word for this, khatam hi nahi hunda, which is actually a huge compliment if you think about it. Not all electrics can achieve these kind of things easily, and if this helps eliminate range anxiety, there's a very powerful reason to go get yourself a BYD, as long as you resolve the Chinese-made car conflict in your head. To us, it's a car on sale in the country. It is more or less imported into this country, so there's no way that you can buy a large number of eMAX 7s anyway. This is why BYD has very small sales numbers in India, but they have wait lists for all of these cars. If you want to buy an eMAX 7, you're probably going to find yourself on a wait list as well. So, good range, very decent driving dynamics, slightly on the soft side, which is why the second and the third row can feel a little bit bouncy. But if you drive cautiously and comfortably, should be a reasonably comfortable city car for the family. You will manage out on the highway a little bit, but he feels like the utility is city oriented, not highway oriented on this particular car. Two versions, 6-seater, 7-seater, two variants with slightly different batteries and ranges. That's the summary of the eMAX 7. What we'd like to see next is for the car to come to us in Mumbai in our testing conditions, do the proper view story, and then figure out what it balances against. From the E6 to the eMAX 7, remember the size of the vehicle has changed, although platform is exactly the same. It's an electric skateboard platform, so in theory, it's sort of like plasticine. You can really quite stretch it out quite a bit, and they have, and therefore this is closer to the size of a Crista in terms of wheelbase, although not physically that large a car, and it won't feel like it. Anything I missed?
Nothing.
That's it. That's all there is to it.
Nice.
Now, BYD, bring your Dolphin.
And no, it's not an Innova killer.
No, of course, every headline must be Innova killer. Otherwise, nobody will see it, Karthik.
Nobody will see. Achha, nobody will see the story. Okay. The fundamentals of the Innova, again, that seating position, second row. And now if we bring in the high cross, and we spoke about this even with the Carnival, that third row of the Carnival versus third row of the high cross, I think the high cross is better.
Yes, but I could get two eMAX 7s for the price of one Carnival.
Yes, that you could. That is there. So anyways, so MPVs, keep in mind, should have that long distance ability, and that's something not decided by the number of seats a vehicle has, right?
Yeah.
Not from me.
What is next from BYD? You said Dolphin. At the Bharat Mobility Expo, we're likely to see more BYDs, and then it will become clear as to what they intend to do next. Yeah, so at the beginning of the next year, 2025, we'll roughly know what else BYD is considering. As of now, I'm not aware that they're trying to build anything in India. They wanted to invest, that was blocked off.
Correct.
And so therefore, they are just importing vehicles for now. And therefore, it's a reasonably smaller operation than it would have been by now if they've been allowed to invest. Whereas, for example, MG was here, and then Jindal Steel, etc. They made the deal, and the ownership pattern changed, but now partly Indian-owned company.
I think something like that should be happening for BYD as well. Okay. And when that happens, I think that's the unlock to the mass market.
Got it.
And then it should be pretty interesting.
Right.
Yeah.
Done. Nothing else? What are you driving next? Desire.
Desire.
It's a strange name for a family car if you think about it.
I'm so excited.
I mean, it is stuck in our head that the Swift Desire is a Desire, and then the Swift they removed, now it's a Desire. But think about Desire. If you were watching a television show and it said ABC soap brings you the new episode of Desire. What do you think of a family sedan? Leave us a comment.
But I'm just so happy with the Desire
Yeah.
for one simple reason. The leaked pictures have just come out
Hmm.
and it looks nothing like the Swift. So finally, the Swift will have its space back.
But they removed the Swift name, so I suppose there was time to remove the grille and the headlight also.
It looks completely different now.
Nice.
So unlike the subtle differences of the last version, this one looks completely different. So
But it's a Maruti. Can it look cool?
we'll see when we see it in the flesh.
Tell us, no, what you think about this. Can Marutis look cool?
Jimny, yeah.
Jimny is not a Maruti. Jimny is an outlier.
Oh,
It's an outlier.
frogs.
See, look, look.
Frogs?
Let's be fair to Maruti. Let's eliminate 2 cars so that we get to the meat of the thing. On this side, we'll eliminate the Celerio, and that's only because the Zen Estilo is no longer in
Don't
production.
forget the espresso, man.
Sorry. I do apologize. We'll remove the espresso on this side. We'll remove the Jimny on this side. Then you see what Marutis are made, what Marutis look like and what they're made of, and then you tell me, can the Desire look cool?
Yeah, you tell us. If you've seen the spy pics, whatever have been floating around, what do you think of the Desire?
Even if you haven't seen the spy pics, I don't think it's important. I'm saying, can a Maruti look cool? Yeah?
Yeah.
If there are any more questions you have about the BYD eMAX 7, please do leave us a comment in case we've covered some detail that you want. We've not covered some detail that you'd like to know of. And stay tuned to MotorInc First. We should have either the Desire or the Pulsar N125.
Coming up next.
I think one of these two will come up next. Yeah. Thank you so much for watching.